Hey, Matt. Thanks for joining us. Got Joy. Who else? Glenn Bolin. Hey, Glenn. Everyone. Oh, are we, Erica, are we streaming on YouTube? I didn't realize.
Live on YouTube.
We do.
Yes.
We do.
We're streaming live now, so I think we can go ahead and get started. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Erica Palmer, Planning Manager, and thanks for joining us for this little refinement of the Sherwood West concept plan. I know that most of you have been on our TAC before. So thanks for joining us again, but I'm just going to go down the list of names. We do have some new people joining us this afternoon, so you will see some new faces, and some agencies got some new faces and they're joining us. So I'll just run down the city folks really quick, and then we'll just go through the list of our agency partners. And then from there, we have actually a new group of consultants working with us, McKinsey. So I'll let them introduce themselves here in just a couple minutes. And then after introductions, I'll kind of run through why we're doing this little narrow scope of refinement, and also kind of where we're at in the process for Sherwood West. So with that, Eric, I'll let you lead off.
Hey, Eric Rutledge, Community Development Director with the City of Sherwood. Thanks for joining this meeting.
Joy.
Joy Chang, Senior Planner for the city.
Colleen.
I don't have a microphone, Erica.
Oh, we hear you, Colleen. Well,
Okay.
Colleen.
I don't know why. Okay.
Perfect. Kirsten.
Hi, I'm Kristen Schweitzer. I'm the Community Services Director here with the City of Sherwood.
Great. I think that's
Looks
Craig.
like
Craig.
logging on, Erica.
What was that?
It looks like Craig is logging on.
Yes.
Okay.
Craig Sheldon, are you on the line? That's fine. Let's just head over to the consultant side here. So Brian.
Good afternoon. I'm Brian Garacchione. I'm a planner at McKinsey and joined by a few of my colleagues. Janet, you can go next.
Hi, Janet Jones, traffic engineer with McKinsey.
And Brent Nielsen, civil engineer with McKinsey.
Hi, Deborah Brask, land use planner at McKinsey and the principal on the project.
And I'm Breezy Reinhardt, civil engineer with McKinsey.
Okay, we may have one other joining us, Scott Moore, if his schedule allows. He's an architect who specializes in industrial projects.
Great. Then I'll just move on to our agency partners here. So Glenn.
Yeah, hey there, Glenn Bolin. I'm principal planner with Region 1 ODOT.
I forget we have two Glens on the line here
Yes.
today.
Two for the price of one. The other Glenn Hamburg with Metro.
Teresa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Teresa Haskins with Portland General Electric.
Suzanne.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Savin, senior planner with Washington County.
Mike. Sorry to call on you while driving.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm Mike Weston. I'm the city manager with King City.
Chris.
Hey everybody, I'm Chris Faulkner, planner with Clean Water Services.
CJ.
Hello, CJ Doxey here with Washington County.
And Matt.
Good afternoon, Matt Craigie with Washington County Economic Development.
And I see Jason Waters from Sherwood.
Oh, you can hear me. I'm on Zoom, so I'm not automatically muted. Yeah, Jason Waters, city engineer for the city of Sherwood. Thanks, Erica.
Great. Oh. We have a couple more people starting to connect here. I don't want to miss anybody. Scott Moore, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Scott Moore. I'm an architect with McKinsey. I head up our industrial development team here. So I'll be helping out with some of the site layouts and whatnot that the rest of the group is going to be working on.
And it looks like we got Craig Sheldon, Erica.
And Craig.
Craig Sheldon, City of Sherwood Public Works Director.
Great. I think that did I miss anyone? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Yep, I think we're good. So once again, thanks for joining us today. So where we're at in the Sherwood West concept plan process. So I think our last meeting was held late last winter, maybe early spring, but our council did accept the concept plan last July as the plan document itself. Over the past couple of months, our council has been discussing what a proposal to Metro would look like in 2024 if they proceed with an urban growth boundary expansion application. We did get, input from our council, and they for a letter of interest that was due to Metro on December 1st, last Friday. And so we submitted a letter of interest to Metro, kind of, explaining that the city may ask, up to the full 1,200 acres of Sherwood West in 2024. We had a conversation with our council last night, and they are, still discussing, what the potential ask, would look like. And we plan to kind of wrap up those conversations in early January so we can put together a complete application to Metro that's due by April 5th. So you're probably wondering what we're doing here today and kind of what we're tasked with as the TAC in this little refinement. So our scope is pretty narrow for this work. After we completed the concept plan last July, we thought we needed to go back and do some additional work, and that work is, it's narrow in scope, and it really focuses on that northern employment area and looking at, parcel sizes and looking at how we can create opportunities for parcels that, could be larger than, 50 acres in size, and looking at what industries could be located on those parcels. And that's probably going to help us make better findings for Title 11 for Metro in our application. And then we are also looking at a better refinement of the costs of infrastructure in all of Sherwood West. So for example, we didn't do a full cost estimate for trails. And so we're going to be looking at that cost estimate and SDC funding and, what the potential gap might be. Eric, do you have any?
Yeah, just really quickly to add on. Thank you, Erica. Readiness, super important. We know Metro is really interested in readiness for any type of expansion area. And so like Erica mentioned, we see the North District kind of as a catalyst in Sherwood West. There's two, and you guys all did it. If you were on the Sherwood West TAC, great job. It was accepted by the council unanimously, and all good things from the electeds on this. And there's really two areas that we see as catalyst development areas. One of them is by the high school. And, we have some improvements there already for road. The Brookman trunk line is going to the high school, et cetera. So that's one sort of catalyst growth area that's going to lead to, additional phasing in Sherwood West. And then the second area is this North District. And so, we had an opportunity a little bit more time to just squeeze this in. So thank you for just pushing this a little bit further with us to get to that, readiness as much as we can. And so, yeah, like Erica mentioned, some cleanup study-wide, but then really also drilling down into this North District so that we can develop it as soon as possible. Our council is, very focused on economic development and job growth. And this area is where most of the jobs within Sherwood West are actually going to come in. So we are really focused on what do we need to do in partnership with all of you guys, Washington County, CWS, everybody, to actually get this area developed as soon as possible, while also, of course, meeting all of our standards and maintaining a high quality of standard for planning and engineering and everything else. So thank you guys again for being on the call and providing the input.
And so since this project is pretty narrow in scope, we only have 2 planned meetings. So we have this meeting today, and then we'll get back to you about another short meeting in January. So with that, I'm going to kick this over to the McKinsey team.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate everyone's time today. And nice to see a wide cross-section of experience, backgrounds, agencies, et cetera. I think that will help keep the process moving and serve the city and the region well. I'm going to flash up on screen. Erica, can I please share screens?
Yes, sorry about that.
Yeah. Anyway, so Erica gave a nice introduction, and then I'm going to show you a whole bunch of maps, and hopefully your eyes don't glaze over too much. But while we're waiting for that to happen, Mackenzie's scope of work is kind of broken down into a couple different tasks. The first one is focused exclusively on the mixed employment area that's designated for the North District. And the question there is, thank you, Erica. The question there is how, well, A, can we make large 50-acre parcels, and B, if so, how would you pull that off? So I'll show you a bunch of maps related to that. And then in the future, our task 2 will be looking at refinements to transportation corridors, utility corridors, doing some cost estimating for that. And that'll be for the entire North District, not just for the mixed employment area. So in terms of schedule, and I'm showing the agenda here on screen.
Sorry, we're getting some feedback from a 7469 number. You can mute that number.
Sorry, that's Darren Smith from Bonneville Power. I couldn't get in the meeting, so I just had to call in.
Oh, hey Darren, thanks for joining us. Yeah, we're just we just did introductions and we're kicking things off. If you're able to mute even your phone, that would be good, and then just unmute when if you're ready to say something.
I will do that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Eric. I thought I was hearing voices. Yeah, so in terms of schedule, Erica mentioned that Metro's cutoff for requests to get in the urban growth number is April 5. So that's driving all of this. So we've got this meeting today to look at the mixed employment area. And then there'll be another meeting scheduled for late January to look at infrastructure corridors and transportation. All with the goal of getting this in front of the elected officials in a timely enough manner that they can evaluate and decide what they may want to ask of Metro in terms of UTV expansion. So really our goal here today is to show you a bunch of maps, to get your feedback, your input, your ideas. And then we have some questions that we put in the agenda for those of you that have had a chance to look at that. And those will help prompt discussion as needed, although I'm sure you all have lots of good ideas and we'll share that with us freely. So first off, particularly for those of you that may not have been part of the prior concept planning efforts, just wanted to provide a little context. And you know, Mackenzie's new to this project too, so these maps that we prepare are not only for the use of the advisory community, but they're for our own use as we get educated about the site and what's been studied in the past. So the first map here shows city of Sherwood city limits in the lime green, and then Sherwood West urban reserve area has the orange outline. That's 1,200-ish acres, and then the North District is the solid orange here, and that's about 400 acres or so, give or take. So for context, we've labeled some of the major roads. Roy Rogers is on the east side, Shoals Sherwood on the north side. We've got Elwood Road down the middle and Edie Road on the south side. This one here is just to help us figure out what does the existing property line status look like? Might actually be a little hard to see in the Zoom screen, so I'm going to zoom in. We've got acreages and tax lot numbers listed for each of these. So the general theme here is that east of Elbert Road, parcels are, for the most part, pretty good size. There's a tiny one here at the corner of a half acre, and then 5 acres, and you go up to 58 acres. So a lot of potential there for efficient development. West of Elbert Road, little bit smaller parcels, and we've got another map where we'll show ownership, and so you'll see multiple owners there as well. So the fragmentation associated with these multiple parcels can make it a bit harder to develop in an efficient manner, just because multiple property owners, they'll have to agree and or sell their property to a developer in order to put together a project that works. We've also got a diagonal line here, which is the alignment of BPA's transmission corridor. Darren, if you're on your phone, you can't see it, but I'm sure you can envision that in your mind.
I've got what was emailed out in front of me. So
Oh,
I'm just
perfect.
scrolling down through it.
Okay. Well, now we're on page 3, which is the environmental considerations. So this is a busy map. There's a lot going on here. Chicken Creek runs through, and it's got associated floodplain, wetlands, some riparian habitat, etc. And so the concept plan largely tries to protect that. There's a lot of emphasis placed on maintaining a greenway, using it for future trails, minimizing development, etc. And so that message comes through pretty strong in the concept plan. But now we can see how some of the decisions were made that went into developing that concept plan. And so a high emphasis on minimizing environmental impacts to the extent possible. There's also some upland habitat, upland wildlife habitat class A and sort of the brown, and class B in the lighter color. And that's largely associated with tree canopy, although there seems to be a little bit of some stale data here, because it still shows habitat in an area where there used to be trees, but those have been removed. I will note, it's discussed in the adopted concept plan as well, that all of Metro's Title 13 boundaries and their significance, and whether it's a habitat conservation area, that will be refined and revised in the future if this comes into the UGV and then the city performs comprehensive planning. So right now it's an inventory, it's not a determination of significance. This map gets at slopes because that can play a big role into the ability to develop. And then it's got contour lines on it. For perspective, those are at 10-foot intervals. So you can see there's a bit of slope, but the northern portion is not crazy steep. And then there's some pretty good steep slopes going down to Chicken Creek. So the pink color is slopes between 10% and 25%. And the red color is slopes over 25%. By way of perspective, Mackenzie works with a variety of industrial clients. Scott introduced himself, and that's the team that he heads up. Our industrial clients start to get nervous when the slope gets over about 5%. And so these areas of 10 and 25 are just too much for industrial. Housing, some office, those can handle larger slopes, but not industrial. And this mosaic of colors here. This is the land uses that were adopted in the concept plan. So the purple is mostly what we're going to focus on today. That is the mixed employment area. The various shades of orange are different flavors of residential that's planned. The dark green is a regional park. And then the light green was Title 13 areas, habitat areas that were envisioned to remain undeveloped. This map also shows streets. Existing streets have the solid lines, and then the dashed streets were shown as conceptual in the concept plan. And so, those are not dedicated rights of way. They're not nailed down, and some of the drawings will show you. I'll have some ideas about potentially how to refine those. Eric, I see you have your hand up.
Hey, sorry, I'm not muted. On the previous slopes, any sense of what the remainder of that land is outside the 10 and 25? It's okay if you don't know now, but I guess, are we looking at a concern with that remainder of the area? Does that seem to be over 5?
Oh, yeah, we haven't done the full analysis of that yet.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
TBD then. Thank you.
Yep. But frankly, I'm not super concerned, particularly East Development Road. It seems viable, especially with this being targeted as a mixed employment district. If it were strictly industrial, that might be a bit harder, but with mixed, you can have a variety of building sizes and formats that would better be able to accommodate some of those slopes. And this one's really hard to see, so I'll zoom in, but we were curious about, well, who owns these properties? So this shows the owner names from the assessor data. And you can see there's some adjoining parcels that have common ownership that can really help with future development, because an end user could come in and purchase, multiple parcels at once from one party and get a pretty good chunk of land. So there's a few here east of Elwood that have shared ownership, and then there's a few west of Elwood too, although those are a bit smaller. And in this case, we're just showing the owners within the mixed employment designation, which is the purple, because that's what our first task is focused on. All right. The city took a little poll. They sent out a mailing to property owners to see, are you interested in developing? Do you want us to buzz off and forever leave you alone, or something in between? So this map basically shows the North District with the orange outline, and then the mixed employment with the purple outline, and how did people respond? So the green, they said their property is available for sale already. The yellow means they're interested in developing. The red was not available. And then the gray was, well, they never responded. That's the beauty of a mailer. It's cheap to send out, but response rates are highly variable. So anyway, one thing that we've discussed with staff is that, kind of regardless of what people's responses are, since this is meant to be a very long range planning exercise, we're not going to factor people's preferences too much into what this might do long into the future, because ownership can change over time. But to the extent that owners might not be interested, for instance, this red swath here, we can at least surmise that that's probably not going to be in the first round of development. Glenn, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, I think Eric was before me, but a quick one. Do we know any rumors? I mean, typically people are approached by developers, want options on the property and things before they actually listed anything. I know there's a couple of big firms on the residential side in this area that have done a good job of locking up a lot of land. I don't know about the industrial employers.
Yeah, I can answer that. So we know, I think this map is good as a starting point. there's background conversations going on between developers and these property owners, and some of them are talking to the city as well. We've heard an attorney on the record during one of the Sherwood West meetings say that there have been offers made from developers on some of these properties already, and they are the ones that are showing no response right now. So, you know, we know that there's more interest and frankly a lot more going on than what's shown here. And that's okay. This is a very specific survey, but I think we're aware of more activity going on.
Thank you. Good question. Appreciate the help there.
Yep, and that was actually going to be my comment as well. So thanks. Good question.
Perfect. All right, so with all that in mind, now we're focused on the mixed deployment area. These are the sorts of things that McKinsey as a design firm looks for based on our experience designing employment projects for private clients. So what are some of the considerations? Well, kind of hinted at some of this earlier, but west of Elwart Road, there's multiple property owners and the parcels are a bit smaller. So that's a bit of an impediment if you're trying to create a large development site, particularly if we start throwing out numbers like 40 acres or 50 acres, because it would mean that that a developer would have to approach multiple property owners and get them to agree on a time frame that works for development. So that's a challenge west of Elwart Road. You'll also see some slope west of Elwart Road, some over 10%, a little bit over 25%. Fortunately, most of the area that's envisioned for employment is outside the steep slope areas, so it's not all encompassing. I'm thankful for that, but it would limit the types of buildings that could be constructed in that area. The road locations, the conceptual road locations that were shown, obviously the spacing of those affects the ability to create large parcels. And so, and there's also city block size standards, and there's transportation related separation requirements for vehicle safety. And so, interestingly, if a project were proposed that strictly met the block spacing requirements, then it would end up with rather a small parcel. And so there's precedent in other parts of the city where large employment projects have come in, where the planning commission's been willing to grant a variance on the block sizing standards in order to allow these large scale development projects. And so something like that would be required here in order to create a 40 or 50 acre parcel. I mentioned it earlier, the BPA electrical transmission corridor, it's kind of on a diagonal here. That doesn't totally preclude all development, but it does specify where buildings themselves could be located. Some uses can be allowed under that, but it's certainly not buildings. And then finally, I mentioned this earlier, but the Metro Title 13 habitat designations. The significance of those areas hasn't been determined. And so, it appears that the concept plan used a kind of arbitrary curved arc of the road to decide that, well, to the northwest, some impacts will be allowed, and to the southeast, they would not occur. So that's something that we're going to look at in some of our various thoughts about how large parcels could be created. And then here's a diagram with a bit more from Janet and her team, a bit more about transportation, intersection spacing standards. So just kind of a graphic to help us think about and analyze, like where would roads be are there opportunities for refining it? What are the spacing standards? In general, at a high level, arterial roads, which are Roy Rogers, Shoal, Sherwood, and Elwood, those all have wide spacing requirements. You don't want every single development to have a driveway on an arterial because it's not safe. And so the idea on those is, to the extent you can, you limit driveways, you have intersecting streets at the appropriate spacing, and you have development speed onto those side streets, whether they're collectors or local roads. And so there's the minimum and maximum spacing standards that we've listed here. So with all that in mind, we decided, let's start sketching. So the goal here was, can we find 50-acre development sites? And we've got, 6 different scenarios. They're not in any particular order or priority. And as a preview, our first question for the advisory committee meeting is, are there any that speak to you? What do you like? What are your comments? So the first one here was just, if we leave the roads exactly as shown in the concept plan, what size development sites can you get? And so, most of our attention is going to be East Developer Road, because that's where you've got large swaths of property, not too steep, and few owners, all of which help to make development easier. So here we've got a range, in the 33 and the 30 some acre size, one just over 20, and then west of Elwood, smaller ones. We've got a couple at 3 acres or so, one at 5, one at 10, and a couple approaching 20 acres. We also added, just to help keep things in mind, we added some notations about how much of that area was designated as habitat. So some of these, if encroachments are allowed, if development's allowed, then the 32-acre site is viable. But if it's not allowed, then this doesn't become a viable site at all, because nearly the entirety of it is in the Title 13 habitat category. So that was the first one. Scenario A. For scenario B, we thought about, what if we delete, what if we eliminate this highlighted road segment here from the concept plan? Maybe it's not needed. And so that would allow, a 50-acre parcel in the northeast corner and about a 21-acre parcel. Still have EPA though, running through that, so not the most ideal, but you could conceivably put a building on either side of the BPA corridor, although the bottom left here is a little harder to get to, not quite as attractive. And then the rest of the map we left the same. For scenario C, what if we took out some more? So everything highlighted in yellow is roads that we thought these could potentially go away. And now you've got a couple of really good sized parcels in the 70-acre range, particularly if we realign the roadway here to extend Conselman Road just easterly as far as you can, and then intersect with Roy Rogers Road. Similarly, on the west side, if this north-south road were eliminated, you get some bigger parcels, nearly 8 acres, 25 acres, and a couple, 15 acres plus or minus. And to provide access here, we're suggesting creating a new road in this location. And then we've got just different variations on removing roads and adding roads, and what shape and size sites could we get. This one's got 58 acres and 70 acres. So the main difference between D and C is in C, we're assuming that this Title 13 area could be used for development. And in D, we're assuming it could not. So there's some sort of policy choice there. In E, we looked at sort of a, you know, a road, curvilinear road that instead of coming down from the north and heading west, it comes up from the south and then heads west. That could allow this upper right corner to be about 76 acres. And in the final scenario, we just said, well, geez, what if we get rid of all those intervening roads? What should you do then? And it's about 150 acres. Obviously, the PPA line still runs through there. You know, that's 15 acres in itself. So 10% of the land would be in that PPA corridor. But you know, if the ultimate goal were just, can you make as big a site as possible, then scenario F would be the way we want to come right off. So I've talked at you for a while. Now I'd like to get some feedback. Anyone with thoughts, preferences, observations, fatal flaws, please tell us. Glenn.
Hi, everybody. I appreciate the conversation about the upland habitat, and Erica and I have had some offline conversations about that as well. And some of the thoughts that I have are that I would want to be cautious about presuming that those areas that are designated and inventoried as Class B upland habitat could necessarily be developed. And Erica and I have sort of talked through a little bit of that, and that there may be some ways that it is. For example, depending on a potential easy analysis that the city could maybe undertake if and when these areas are brought into the urban growth boundary. But if the outcome of such an easy analysis would be uncertain, and if that easy analysis didn't occur, then there would be essentially, I'll just say, sort of automatic land use restrictions on development under the metro rules that could prohibit most, but not necessarily all level of development. So I guess maybe some thought I have is to the degree that we're relying on some of that upland habitat area, including those areas that have been concept planned as mixed employment for sort of meeting some large parcel land need, I would encourage us to sort of think of ways that we could find the large parcels and meet industrial development elsewhere outside of the upland area. I'm curious about I was looking at scenario F. I'm sorry, scenario E, the one right before this. Right. And there's that dashed blue line that follows the northeast edge of the upland habitat area, which I like. And I'm wondering if it's necessary to also have that dashed blue line further south, or if that road segment could be removed in order to avoid the potential of, severing this upland habitat and building roads closer to that riparian area. But those are just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Any other observations from committee members?
Mike has his hand up. Mike Weston.
Oh, thank you.
So I was looking at this a little bit, and I'm wondering the trail. I believe you guys had a trail kind of going along Coffee Creek, and do you have a trail that's also underneath the power lines?
Yes.
And so you're looking at the roads. I would caution about making larger blocks because of the walkability piece. Like, even if it's industrial, having those roads provide backbones for pedestrian and bicycle access ways. And while a large site is great for industrial purposes, maybe you still have public rights of way within those industrial areas to allow some walkability and connectivity for the adjacent neighborhoods. We have an industrial area in around ours that actually has like nice walkways and bike areas that, I often jog or bike and they work great, So just thinking of that in mind, sometimes industrial uses don't play very nice, but sometimes they can be very nice features for the neighborhood.
Great, thank you, Mike. Glenn, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I think on the same theme of block sizing. I feel to me well, a couple of questions actually before this. First, so I'm understanding the new EOA work is making a recommendation for the large lot availability. Again, one of my questions would be before you do too much is, are you going to prohibit subdividing to smaller scales to keep that large site? If you're not, then I don't know if it's worth all the machinations to create a large site, because it's, once there's a tough one, right? You create those large sites, then you got to stay to your guns and wait until the buyer comes in to let users come in. You don't get, so you're going to get pressure from those landowners right away saying, hey, you came into the UGB, you guys want to do something? I want to go. I've got these 3 people who want to do these 15-acre projects. That, it's great if that's what you want, but if it's not what you want, then you have to do business. But that's something to consider. What I would say from transportation planning standpoint is, I feel like the connectivity itself is more important than the locations of the facilities. So one of the things I've done when I've developed standards, for places such as this or different places is like, hey, however long your frontage is, you're going to get one road, you're going to get one arterial, or you're going to get 2 collectors, or whatever it's going to be. First developer gets to decide where that's going to be, as long as it's with the spacing parameters. So imagine if you just took off the roads and put graph paper on it, you can do enough dots. That's where a line crosses your property. If you got one, you find one somewhere, as long as it's not too close to another. So that would be an administrative way to allow for the lines to shift based on development proposals, rather than be, within that range. So that's just my thought. But I think it's pretty important to keep that connectivity, as Mike noted, for multimodal transportation of all sorts.
Great. Okay, Teresa.
Well, I really appreciate what was just said, but and I would add to that, I think of it more from a market driving perspective. And I mean, putting power aside, we'll have some other conversations about Portland General. What I observe in responding to requests for property and for industrial customers is that we do not, within the greater metro and valley area, have lot sizes or parcel sizes that are large enough for a majority of the leads that we get. And so it really, in my opinion, comes to, what does the city or the council want to see on the kinds of industrial development out there? Do you want a, larger manufacturing kind of process out there, or do you want smaller requests? So the average acreage that I have been observing lately from Business Oregon, when they send out requests for interest, are at least 35 acres minimum. Most of them want more close to 100. And we just, this doesn't meet a 100-acre need very well unless you put it all in that. But just the comment really being that it's important to consider, what does the industrial market need and use, and what's the average size of a project happening right now, and the number of jobs and such that might be associated with that. So Portland General will, and as we do in any of these, serve whatever the city decides on. But I just think you need to spend some time thinking about who are those industries you want to target, and what are the acreages that those industries need.
Hey, Teresa. Matt?
Yeah, thank you. Just one observation and then more of a comment too. One observation, in one of the earlier slides that you had, Brian, there was mention of a community park kind of to the west of Elwert Road. And I wonder, given the conversation around upland habitat and riparian areas, if those areas could also serve as a community park, thinking about land that can be taxed and community parks which are not taxed. And if I know local governments all across Oregon really face strong fiscal challenges, and so if an upland habitat or a riparian zone could be used for a community park, that might be a more advantageous use of those properties with given that lens, that perspective. So just a thought there. And I guess the other thing is I just keep staring at the BPA line and just thinking, oh gosh, how unfortunate. So I don't know. I think Mackenzie, y'all are the experts. I would just be interested. I was kind of zooming around on Google Earth, kind of looking at other typologies in our region of how industrial properties deal with such a thing. I think that BPA lines can go over parking lots. So we know that employment land likes big rectangular pieces of property that are flat, and so I see that you're doing a good job of trying to do that, but would love to see if you have some typologies that show how you can fit in flex industrial or other types of typologies that you expect to happen here, given that challenge of the BPA line. So, thanks.
Okay, Scott Moore, do you have some comments on that? You've done industrial projects in your power lines before.
Yeah, oftentimes when we're dealing with large kind of utility easements like that, there are allowances to do certain things within those easements, whether or not it's maybe maneuvering space for large vehicles or some storage areas, but obviously not building. So there are things that we can utilize those areas for to help support an industrial development. It just wouldn't be building.
And Darren, from BPA's perspective, what are you generally comfortable with near your corridors?
I was just about to chime in. Generally, what we see is people ask for water detention ponds, parking lots, things that they want to get away from using their other buildable land for. So this is a 500 kV line, a major line going through there. So I believe it should be tall enough, even with for like parking lot lights and that type of thing. They'll need to be very careful about planting any vegetation through there if they do parking lots. I know that's always big, and trying to do islands and that type of thing, but for a big KV, 500 kV line, that's not looked at very popular. But for the most part, just think of all those type of things, and where they can build elsewhere, where they can have pass-throughs, driving around. All of that is generally what would get approved through there. But you're right, no building in there other than basically like a 10 by 10 shed. That's about the biggest building they would allow in there.
Okay. Any other comments from committee members? Teresa, did you have another question, or are you still raised from before?
No, I have another comment or question, just thinking about it as Darren was talking. And I didn't see it on any of these maps, but we will need and want to reserve a minimum, well, probably more like 5 acres or a little, at least 5 acres for a substation site. And so how those lines come in, and that's where topology and elevation in that will make a difference too. So we can't put a substation on a slope, right? So and then how those lines feed in, we'll have to look at all of that, but just want to make sure we don't forget the need for that space.
Correct. And that's why we have a follow-up meeting with you tomorrow. Talk about
Yep.
those sorts of things.
And then there'll be a smarter engineer like person on the phone with me.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
And Brian, just to clarify, I think you mentioned in the beginning, but we have a lot of part like CWS, Washington County. I think the next meeting is when we're going to get into all the infrastructure, right? So there's, to me, it's like this focus on the lot size was a great conversation. The next meeting will be, I think, probably more important, to be honest. It really get into the infrastructure and really what we need to develop this. So I think there's going to be a lot more substance from hopefully from you guys in terms of feedback on the next round, particularly CWS with Storm, Washington County with Elwood Road, ODOT with connection to 99, all that sort of stuff. So just to clarify that conversation is coming.
Yeah, this is kind of a teaser for that. We're not really focused on roadway corridors yet, but it wasn't something we thought we could ignore. If we're talking about parcelization and lot layout, we need to think about allowable spacing for roads. And so that's what informs some of the drawings. I think at this point I might ask if there's any other McKenzie staff that have some items that they'd like to throw out to the team and get responses on.
Nothing at this point, especially given that we have the infrastructure meeting coming up. We'll want to focus on some pointed questions there, but nothing else in terms of layout, I think.
Okay.
Maybe some perspective, Brian, if you pull up the maps and maybe we can look at the concept of that western north-south road, and want to get any feedback on whether we want to have that road in there or if there's opportunity to consolidate some of those properties.
Right. This one here that we've highlighted in yellow in scenario E is the one we're looking at. So we're not part of the concept planning process, but when we looked at the three scenarios, the three different alternatives that were evaluated, they all had the same exact street network. And in some of those alternatives, having this north-south road, made some sense because there was going to be housing on either side of it. And so you need that. But the final preferred alternative selected was, mixed employment in all that area. And so you just don't need as many roadways. So from our perspective, reducing the number makes sense to accommodate larger site sizes. But yes, we'd like to hear from you regarding Brent's specific question of what do you think about the need or lack of need for this particular north-south connection?
Do you know what's the length between Elwood and the edge of the Sherwood West boundary? Do you know?
Off the top of my head, so
Say roughly about 1,000 feet.
1,000, okay.
1,300.
And these would be local roads or?
Yeah, I mean, the concept plan didn't really designate that, but presumably.
In my opinion, and kind of what I heard through some of the comments today, which is all really, really good feedback. There's competing interests in here between the comments on walkability and getting, breaking up block size versus targeted industries and what they need. Upland habitat versus, developable land. There's a lot of street spacing and lot sizes. There's a lot of competing interests, and I think that's exactly why we're having this conversation and getting all these questions answered. So I think we need to probably get into it a little bit more and figure out what the intended uses are here in a little bit more detail. I appreciate the comments about like building typology and like, what are we really going for here, and what does it require? And so, part of this study is pushing that question as well, of like looking at economic development clustering, and what can we reasonably expect to attract here, and can then, based on that, can we provide the land base to meet that target industry. And so, if there's a way to get to check all the boxes as much as possible, that'd be great. So, I think Mike mentioned public easements. So maybe you don't need a full road, but a public, require the developer to put in a public easement through the property to make sure that people can get through. That seems like potentially a win-win for both the competing interests. So I think that's kind of how I'm looking at things. We need to drill down more into the actual end users here. And what we've heard, I'm not an economic development practitioner, but what I've heard a lot is we need to, your land supply and the type and the size, the shape of the land that you have available is going to determine what you can actually attract here. And so we're trying to use what we have and create something for those target industries. But I think we as a city need to drill down a little bit more. And Bruce Coleman isn't in this meeting. He got a flat tire, unfortunately, but he's getting towed back to City Hall right now, but he would be chipping in on this as well. I think we need to drill down on that a little bit more. And I think that might help us answer some of these questions, these trade-off questions about spacing and connectivity and other things.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment, because we could draw all day, but ultimately it comes down to what are the priorities that the city wants to advance, factoring all these things in. Circling back to what Glenn mentioned, Glenn Hamburg, how much development do you want to assume is allowed in Title 13? You could assume a lot and then be in for a surprise when you can't actually pull it off.
Yep.
Glenn, I'm gonna pose a question to you. I mentioned earlier that some of the area kind of in the northern section showed as habitat, but the trees are gone. I presume that wouldn't be too hard to adjust.
Yeah, I thank you for mentioning that, and I agree. The formal process would need to play out, but I have seen the current aerial imageries where there are no trees left standing on sort of that northern wedge of that main portion. So I feel like it would be okay to presume that those cleared areas, depending on how this all unfolds, could potentially be used for development. And the city would effectively adopt a land use plan map that doesn't include those spaces as protected upland habitat because there's no longer any habitat there. It's kind of the denser areas that still have matured trees and large sections of them connected to riparian areas that serve a lot of environmental value. Large patches that are greater than 2 acres or more, indeed these are 30 plus acres connected to riparian areas, do indeed serve a lot of habitat value. So that could, in that sort of analysis of significance, result in a determination that no, this needs to stay. So
great, thank you. We were kind of wondering a little bit just to the background conversations that led to the prior ideas to paint the purple employment zone on top of some of those Title 13 areas.
My 2 o'clocker, my 3 o'clocker was just starting out, so I need to get going, but I just kind of reiterate what I said. Connectivity is always good. Less reliance on single facilities, and to that, I'd even consider changing the spacing requirements, for arterials, that if you have local streets or collectors, hitting them more frequently, and just be flexible then when you develop. So there's some thoughts, but hey, great work.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any final comments before we wrap things up? All right. right. Well, thank you all for your time. Hope you have a good afternoon. And we'll see you in late January with a more refined version of utility and transportation corridors.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for facilitating. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you all.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
all.
you,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye-bye.